and Iran, making them less dependent on the U.S.
I don't know of any case in Latin America where sanctions have produced the desired results, even partially.
The same might be said for unilateral sanctions in other parts of the world. But while they may not be effective, they remain Washington's preferred means of persuasion. Lucien Newman, Al Jazeera.
Hundreds of mourners in Morocco have attended the funeral of the boy at the center of a rescue operation watched around the world. 5-year-old Rayhan fell into a 32-meter well last week. He was trapped 5 days while rescue teams worked around the clock to save him. His body was recovered on Saturday. A new atlas developed by researchers in France and the US is giving a clearer but mixed picture of the world's mountain glaciers. Now, there's around 250,000 of them around the globe. The findings by the Institute of Environmental Geosciences and Dartmouth College show that overall they hold less ice and fresh water than expected. Now, that's good for the fight against rising sea levels, but the research has gloomy implications for drinking water, agriculture, and power generation in places that depend on glaciers. There's about a quarter less glacial ice in drinking water than previously thought in South America's tropical Andes Mountains, which run through parts of Bolivia, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Venezuela. But it's the opposite in Asia's Himalayan mountains. Data shows the region has about 30% more ice than scientists anticipated. Gillian Wolfe has the story.
These mountain glaciers contain less fresh water than originally thought. And that doesn't just mean a loss of natural beauty. It puts the fresh water supply for millions of people at risk.
It's easy to just focus on the impacts of ice loss on tourism because those of us in the Western world visit glacier systems as a leisure activity. But actually people who live around them and actually downstream from them, more importantly, depend upon them as a buffer for the amount of water that enters the river systems from which they irrigate their crops and drink.
High-resolution satellite images have allowed scientists to more accurately calculate how fast a glacier is moving. The faster it moves, the thinner it is, and the less water it contains. That might mean the world's sea levels might not rise by quite as much as originally thought.
What you have to keep in mind is that our study does not include the Greenland and the Antarctic ice sheet, who in the long term will be the major drivers of sea level rise. And just looking at the total volume of the ice sheet compared to the glaciers, if all Antarctica would melt, it has the potential to increase the sea level rise by more than 15 years, which is way more than the 25 centimeters from the glaciers.
Countries around the world are struggling with disappearing glaciers. Peru is investing in desalination to make up for the loss of fresh water. And Chile hopes to create artificial glaciers in the Andes. But that won't be enough.
We don't want all the glaciers to melt. We want them to last as long as possible. And the fact that there's 20% less ice stored in mountain glaciers, if nothing else changes, means that they'll disappear 20% sooner. We don't want to be in a situation where there's no ice left on Earth. We want to preserve the ice on Earth, and that now, overnight, becomes a more difficult challenge.
A challenge those most affected hope the world will accept. Gillian Wolfe, Al Jazeera.
This is Al Jazeera, and these are the top stories. US President Joe Biden has vowed to shut down the crucial Russian gas pipeline to Germany if Moscow invades Ukraine. His comments came as German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited Washington.
Germany and the United States, together with our allies and partners, are working closely together to pursue diplomatic resolutions of this situation. And diplomacy is the very best way forward for all sides, we both agree, including the best for Russia, in our view. And we have made it very clear we're ready to continue talks in good faith with Russia. Germany has also been a leader in pushing de-escalation of tensions and encouraging dialogue through the Normandy format. But if Russia makes the choice to further invade Ukraine, we are jointly ready, and all of NATO is ready.
And in Moscow, Russian President Vladimir Putin met his French counterpart, Emmanuel Macron. Putin said he hoped that war could be avoided.
The president preferred to come to Russia to share opinions about what we should do next, and some of his ideas and proposals, about which I think are too early to speak, but I think these ideas could form a basis for our further joint steps.
Hong Kong is seeing record coronavirus cases, calling into question its strict zero COVID strategy. Measures remain in place, including flight bans, targeted lockdowns, and business restrictions. A Canadian court has banned truckers from sounding their horns in central Ottawa as part of a crackdown on an 11-day-long anti-government protest by truckers. The so-called Freedom Convoy began as a protest against a COVID-19 vaccine mandate for cross-border drivers. Israel's police chief has asked for an independent inquiry after reports that his officers used the controversial Pegasus spyware to target citizens. The Pegasus program has been used to spy on human rights activists, journalists, and politicians around the world. Well, those are the headlines. There'll be more news here on Al Jazeera right after Inside Story. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now.
New research gives unprecedented insight into the frozen corners of our world. Scientists say there's less water and ice in the globe's glaciers than they thought. So will this alter the way we manage the effects of climate change? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the program. I am Hashim Ahaballah. We've been given a clear but mixed picture of the world's glaciers. The Institute of Environmental Geoscience and Dartmouth College have put together a revealing atlas. It shows glaciers hold less ice and fresh water than previously thought, so they shouldn't add as much as fear to rising sea levels. But the overall trend of warming and loss remains unchanged. South America's tropical Andes Mountains, for example, were found to have nearly a quarter less of ice. The darker colors show where glaciers are melting the fastest. Though more positive for sea levels, the research has gloomy implications for drinking water, agriculture, and power generation in places that depend on glaciers. Let's bring in our guest in Hanover, New Hampshire, Matthew Morligan, Distinguished Professor of Earth Sciences at Dartmouth College and co-author of the report. In Zurich, Professor Daniel Farinotti is Chair of Glaciology at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. In Brussels, Stefan Zinger, Senior Climate Science and Global Energy Policy Advisor at the Climate Action Network International. Welcome to the program. Matthew, the retreat of ice sheets and glaciers has been closely monitored over the last few years. This time with the new report suggesting there's less ice in the glaciers and less fresh water, is it just consolidating the belief that this is something which is linked to global warming?
So this is a great question. First, I would like to put things maybe a bit in context.
Mm-hmm.
And we're talking here about mountain glaciers. So we basically have land ice that's split between the glaciers that are in mountains and the big ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica.
Mm-hmm.
So while this number of 20% may sound like a lot, it represents about 6 centimeters of sea level rise. Whereas one single glacier in Antarctica alone, Waste Glacier, that you may have heard of, sometimes referred to as Doomsday Glacier, would add 2 feet to the ocean. So in terms of sea level implications, this number is actually pretty small. The sea level is going to continue to rise, and it's rising at an increasing rate. Now, something that people may not realize is that we still know very little about the glaciers that we have in our mountains. There is 200,000 of them distributed around the globe, and it's notoriously difficult to predict their future because we still lack, basic knowledge of their geometry, how big they are, how thick they are. We've had a lot of progress over the past 30, 40 years with satellites in space, and so we've been using this to try to better understand how much ice we have left.
Good. Daniel, since we're trying to build together